Talking to her like back then, they didn't want me, I'm back then, they didn't want me, I'm back then, they didn't want me, I'm blessed now. Talking to her like this. Talking to her like this. Talking to her like this.
Raider Nation, what is the deal, man? You are back here for another episode here of the Raider Rundown, man. And today we are going to be tapping in with some defensive prospects and also touching on some of the moves the Raiders have made on the defensive side of the ball. As you can see, we got a very special guest in the building, man. So without further ado, as y'all know, first of all, this is a pre-recorded episode, so let y'all know that. All right, but before we go ahead and get into it, make sure you guys hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Let's go ahead, let's play this funky music, and let's get into the episode. Man, what is the deal, everybody? What is the deal? Again, you are back here for another episode here of the Raider Rundown. Make sure you guys are tapping on that like button and the subscribe button if you're feeling what you're hearing. Always trying to bring you some of that fire content. As you can see today, man, we got a very special guest, man, none other than TDL's Matt Holder in the building, man. My guy, what's going on with you today, man?
Not much, man. Appreciate you for having me on. Excited to talk some ball.
Of course, man. Of course, always, man. It's been a long time in the making, man. I know you had a lot of things going on, as we both do, man. But we definitely been meaning to talk about some things, definitely since the Senior Bowl too. But everything's been culminating now. We got the combine, and I think we about like less than a month away from the draft. So we here. So, but before we get into that, man, the Raiders have made some signings. And I know you probably touched on this ad nauseum, but just a little bit. How have you felt about the Raiders offseason so far on the defensive side of the ball? What have you feel we've done? Have you feel it's kind of the same, good, bad? What's your thoughts real quickly on the offseason as a whole on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, the best way I can explain it is the Raiders definitely got more economical, where obviously didn't pay Trevon Merrick, $17 million and signed Jeremy Chin for about half as much, which again, I feel like with moves like that, like, obviously, you're saving some money, but I do think you're losing a little bit of talent. I think I would take Trevon Merrick player for player over a guy like Jeremy Chin. But then again, when you factor in the contracts, then it becomes a different story.
Right.
It's a little bit of a double-edged sword where I get it. You're not paying a ton of money to keep guys that are probably getting overpaid in free agency. But at the same time, you are sacrificing some talent on the field. So the defense, to me, definitely got worse. While I definitely don't think they're, at a terrible level, I do think losing guys like Trevon, losing guys like Robert Spillane and Nate Hobbs are going to be bigger losses than people realize. And I don't think they replaced them with some solid players, but I definitely think they downgraded a little bit. And I mean, nickel corner is, I'm sure we'll talk about it here in a few. Nickel corner is one of the big sore spots now without Nate Hobbs in the lineup.
Man, and I once we get into the draft, I definitely want to get your take on that because that's something I've been preaching like for a minute. But just kind of touching on that, like for me, I agree with you because I've been saying I don't think Trayvon Merrick is a $9 million better player than Jeremy Chin. That's just me personally. I don't because of where he got paid and where Chin is about 9 million roughly. I would say like that.
Yeah.
That's around the difference. I don't think he's that much significantly better than Jeremy Chin. I say it better. We probably lateral moves at most, but I think that's where people are getting antsy because they feel like you're saying, we probably lost a lot of talent. But for me, I think probably right now, looking, Nate Hobbs is the biggest loss in my opinion. Because we have not replaced that. I don't think we've replaced it adequately either. But in your opinion, I mean, let's get to talking about the weaknesses now. I mean, kind of where are you looking at in the holes in this defense now that free agency has kind of calmed down, and now we picking and choosing where we're going. Where are the weaknesses you looking at?
Well, I think you hit it on the nail right on the head. As that slot corner position is now a big question mark. Who's going to fill that role? And then on top of that being the free safety, who's going to take on that responsibility? Because I think with Jeremy Chin, one of the big differences between him and Merrick is Merrick, especially in the second half of last year, where he showed up in the box and played strong safety, where he kind of proved that he can do it all at all three levels of the defense. And as we know, he can play the free safety spot too, whereas that's where Chin kind of has part of his shortcomings of he's not that type of player where he's really good in the box, but I don't think you can really trust him to play a lot of single high coverages where you could with Trayvon Merrick. So I'm curious to see who's going to line up at that free safety spot. Is it going to be Isaiah Palomau, who's been up and down? I thought it was up and down last year in this first year that he really got to play a lot, but does seem to be trending upwards with his projection and whatnot. And then Thomas Harper was a guy that they started playing a lot in the last like month and a half, last 2 months or so. Last season, who again played that free safety spot and in college played a lot of the nickel. So I think they have some guys that you might be able to get by there, but it's a lot of young and unproven guys where it's just right now when we look at this roster in April, it doesn't look great. It doesn't look great. And those are two spots where I'm sitting there saying they need to at least bring in some competition here in the draft where whether or not their in-house guys end up taking over those roles or if someone else does, then that remains to be seen. But at the very least, I think you need to bring in some competition. And then linebacker too. I like a guy like a Landon Roberts. I like his game, but he is about to turn 31 and on a 1-year deal. So I think you need a long-term plan there. And Roberts, for at this point in his career, we know he's not going to be good in coverage. He's a 2-down type of player. And then on top of it, losing Divine Diablo, who I wasn't a big fan. I've never a big fan of Diablo's game, but he was a starter last year. And now that becomes a hole. So I think linebacker spot's a big need. And then nose tackle too is going to be a huge one. I know they brought in that league. I think it's Leaky Fotu.
Yeah, something like that. I believe.
Yeah. Who played like 10 snaps or whatever, 2 games last year for the Jets. Yeah. So that to me is another spot where they need an immediate starter. And then at the edge spot, I am curious to see how they approach it with this draft. I don't know if they do anything this year, but Malcolm Kuntz is a guy that they brought back on a 1-year deal. I'm high on Malcolm Kuntz, but the thing is, if Malcolm Kuntz plays well this year, does he price himself out of the Raiders? And then you have to find that edge, the edge in that second pass rusher next year. Obviously, that's looking in a little bit too far into the future, but just kind of outlining, where they are heading into this draft, where that might be something that they consider in, second, third, and fourth rounds of getting a succession plan in case Kuntz isn't brought back next year.
Yeah, and I think everything you've touched on, I think you've been preaching with everything you've touched on. Quick question now to start off with I'd say the Trayvon Merrick and the Jeremy Chin debate, and now you would say we lack at the free safety roaming spot back there. Would you say now there's a need for a third safety to say like we need a third guy to come in here and be able to roam and say like, to be able to let Chin be in the box a little bit more and to let Isaiah Palomau not have the whole thing. Now, I'm a fan of Isaiah Palomau, but I do agree that I don't think his natural position is out there roaming back there and playing natural free safety. I don't believe that. So do you think there's a possibility of maybe PG saying, okay, we got to maybe have 3 safeties on here to be able to do everything that we need to do?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think if you look at the way Graham was running the defense in the second half of last year, they were using a lot of 3 safety sets, and that's what he did a lot at New York. the way I kind of view Jeremy Chin is if you go back and watch what Jabril Peppers did with Patrick Graham and the Giants, like that's kind of the similar type of role. So I think that could be, again, that could be, the third linebacker, if you will. It would be Jeremy Chin. And then on top of that, when you take out a linebacker, usually that means you're bringing in another DB, whether it be to cover the slot or to play on the free safety spot. So yeah, I definitely think that that's going to be one thing that they try and emphasize in the draft and try and go after and get this in next month.
Now, see, okay, that down leads me into the linebacker position and the newly acquired linebacker that we just got in Devin White. Now, me personally, I'm tempering expectation. I told myself I'm trying to be the most realistic podcaster when it comes to the Raiders this offseason, bro. So you talked about, what we lost, Spillane, and when you say Divine Diablo here on this show, man, everybody know my feelings towards that. I'm right with you. I wasn't a fan. I was not a fan. Yeah. But I do like what he brings. We obviously still like the pass coverage, but bringing Devin White, what can he bring? Now, me personally, I'm not super excited, right? I mean, I haven't seen the production as of lately. Last time I saw it, it was 2019, 2020, and it's 2025. So long time ago. What are you expecting? What are you looking for? Like, what do you feel about that signing of Devin White?
Yeah, for me, Devin White just doesn't move the needle much. I'm at this point in this career, like it's funny. We were just talking about this on Tape Don't Lie earlier. I don't know of a guy that was in negotiation for a second contract in the NFL and had a steeper drop off in the last 2 years. I mean, he was in his last few years in Tampa Bay, like they were talking about extending him. Those talks ended up following through. And then he leaves in free agency, signs with Philly, and doesn't even play. And then ends up getting cut, goes to Houston and was a backup. So I think that kind of tells you a lot about Devin White. He's been he's a player that kind of doesn't have a real position in the NFL. Like he's just not good in coverage and not good against the run as a linebacker. But what he is good at is he's rushing the passer. The problem is he doesn't have like the edge rusher type of size and it isn't quite on that level at that stage. So he's a guy that, for me, I think the best way or the most you can expect to get out of him is kind of coming in on third down and being a guy that can maybe blitz in the A gap and run some line games and stuff like that. But as far as him being, the starter replacement that they need after losing both starters from last season, like I just wouldn't expect Devin White to fill that role. It was an interesting signing because again, I just don't know what his true position is in the NFL because his role is basically as a blitzing linebacker, and outside of that, I don't know how much more he can give you.
Preaching again, man. And this is what I've said as well. It's like, yes, he can bring some ability and athletic ability on third down, right? Because if there's not many linebackers with that type of speed, if you get him going to the quarterback, right? Like he does have that type of ability. And if we have that with our D line, which we feel like will be good, there's some pressure you can apply with the quarterback, but that's only in limited spots. Like that's damn near, like you said, third down, bro. Like we're not using him first. Like what are we gonna do first and second? We still have that problem. So I feel like now this leads us into the prospects, right? Like who can we look at as far as the draft? Maybe now. I've seen you post Jahad Campbell, and he's got some steam now from the nation. A lot of people looking. A lot of people have even been telling me like, "Yo, you gotta." Be real. This dude is real. So I like him. I think he brings some things to us that we don't have in that linebacker room. And I don't care if we sign Devin White, if he's there, if we could trade down maybe and get him, I definitely do it. I don't know about 6. It might be rich. But what are your thoughts on Jahad Campbell? This now going into the draft, right? Like what are some prospects you might be looking at on the linebacker side, maybe first round that we might need to look at?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jahad Campbell, I think we're on the same page with him. Like I like him a lot. I like his game. At 6 might be a little bit rich if they could trade back into say, the early teens and something like that and end up picking up like an extra mid-round pick and getting Jahad Campbell. I'd be really excited with that coming out of the first round.
I like
I mean, he's a dude to me, like he flies around the field, super athletic, can be the coverage linebacker that they need to complement Landon Roberts. And on top of it, he's shown enough for me against the run that I think he can trend upwards and I think he can grow that part of his game at the next level. And he like just turned 21 in February. So he's super young too. So the arrow is definitely pointing up on Jahad Campbell. And I think that's why he's definitely gained some steam over the last over the last few months, where he's built up some draft buzz to solidify himself as a first rounder and maybe even creep up into those teens picks. So I like his game a lot. Again, at 6, it would be a little bit of a reach for me. I prefer to see them trade back and be able to get him later, but obviously there's a risk in that, because who knows, maybe there's another team that likes him even more and likes his ceiling and his potential and ends up nabbing him. So he's definitely a guy that I think is on the radar in the first round, but it's just a matter of what's that sweet spot where he ends up coming off the board.
Yeah, because it's one of those weird drafts where you got your blue chip guys, of course, but then it's like it's only like a handful of them, and then after the blue chip, you got to like, all right, well, who do we like at that point? Like, just who is our personal favorite people? Now, I agree with you. He brings that coverage ability, that rangy ability that we kind of lack right now in that linebacker room. Now, another linebacker that I guess you could call him a linebacker, but another guy that we can kind of look at, but he's a different skill set, which is Jalen Walker, right? Like, so you get a different type of thing with Jalen Walker, where he's more like, you get that edge rushing ability, and you get kind of sort of that linebacker, but I don't think he gives you most of the coverage that we're looking for. But if they were to look at Jalen Walker, I mean, what would your feeling be on that? I mean, how are you looking at him as a prospect stacked up with, say, like a Jahai Campbell?
Well, see, Jalen Walker is an interesting guy for me, because we were just talking about Devin White and how he kind of was that tweener and that interesting skill set that you don't quite know how it fits in the NFL. I think that's what scares you a little bit about Jalen Walker, and what might give some teams some hesitation, because he's kind of good at a lot of things, not great at anything really. Where like he can be a good off-ball linebacker, and he can be a good pass rusher as well. But where does he kind of fit in? He doesn't have the edge rusher size. I think that's part of the reason why Georgia moved him this past season to the second level. So I like his game a lot. I mean, I think he's obviously had a pretty impressive career and pretty impressive season this last year at Georgia. It's just a matter of where do you play him? Do you want him on the edge? And again, where maybe his size becomes a bigger issue, or do you think you can bulk him up? Or do you want him playing that off-ball linebacker and helping him sit and develop a little bit? I don't know how much of an immediate impact he can make because of that, because part of my concern with Jalen Walker is he doesn't have great instincts. And I think that one comes from, he didn't really play that much at Georgia in this past season. That's typical with a lot of Georgia guys, because they have so many dogs, for no pun intended, on that defensive side of the ball, that a lot of guys just kind of be the 1-year players that end up getting drafted. So didn't play a ton until this past season. And then on top of it was learning a new position. So I think he's a guy you'd have to be a little bit more patient with. But man, there are a lot of clips where you sit back, you're like, man, do I just draft this guy and just get a good football player at the end of the day?
That's what I'm saying, man. Like, there's sometimes you just looking like that's just ball. Like he's just making a play at that point. Like, so that is some of that right there, definitely. But transitioning from the linebackers, and this is a conversation that I definitely was looking forward to having. Right. Now a lot of people, when they talk about our number 6 pick, when it's a defender, it's Mason Graham maybe, and I like Mason Graham. I think if he was there, I think I'd do that. Or Will Johnson, right? So before we get into Mason, let's say Will Johnson, right? For me, my thing has been, I don't know about Will Johnson because he does not solve the need, right? And the need for me is like, we still don't have a slot. I don't think, because Will Johnson don't play slot. In my opinion, he's an outside guy. So for me, we still wouldn't even have a slot. And I know some people have said, slide Ja'Cory Bennett in there. I don't think I would do that to slide him at slide. I don't know if I do that. Jack Jones, hey, I don't know if I slide. Some people may like to gamble with their lives like that, but I'm not doing that, putting him at slot. So I've looked at Jahdae Barron, right? Because I feel like he has slot ability and he'd be able to do that. So for you, I mean, would you take Will Johnson and just say that talent alone is just enough to take that there? Or kind of, how do you feel about Jahdae Barron as well?
Yeah, so I like Will Johnson. Will Johnson's my cornerback one. He's been my favorite corner since this past summer. To me, there's not that many, there's very few flaws in his game. Where I see what you're saying, like, does he necessarily fill the slot corner role that the Raiders need right now? Maybe, maybe not. I think he can play in there a little bit. I think he's got a good enough run defense and he's physical enough to maybe get by in that spot. But he's at his best as an outside corner. And the way I look at him is he solves their need for that cornerback one that we've been talking about for the last few years. That spot that we thought, maybe Jack Jones might step into next year. And obviously that didn't quite work out. So that's where I kind of like go out with Will Johnson of like, yes, right now he doesn't fill the need that you're looking for in the slot corner. But to
Mhm.
me, he does fill the need like that. He can be your alpha on the outside. And then kind of from there, you just kind of got to figure it out. I do kind of like Ja'Cory Bennett in the slot a little bit. He had a pretty good year on the outside last season, but he has the size and the twitch to be able to make that position switch. And he did it a little bit at Maryland and in college, but it wasn't obviously his biggest role. So I think he could potentially make that transition. The bigger issue would be his tackling has kind of been one of his biggest Achilles heels in the NFL, and that's going to obviously be a bigger concern at nickel. So yes, if you draft Will Johnson, you do need a nickel in the interim, but I think you get a premier corner on the outside that can be your cornerback one. And I do like Jahdae Barron a lot too. I think, like you said, like he probably transitions a little bit better in the nickel position. It's just, again, kind of going back to what we've been circling to a little bit. Do you want to take that at 6, or do you want to try and trade back and get cute with it? So yeah. I mean, to me, those are two pretty good options at the cornerback spot if that's the route that the Raiders want to go with.
Yeah, I'm not mad at those at all. And then that's the whole thing. Like Will Johnson, more of, I think, consensus. Everybody would say, okay, if you take him at 6, everybody would understand, and you'd be like, all right, it is what it is. Jahdae Barron, I think a lot of Raider fans would be like, well, who the hell did we just pick before whatever we did? So you probably have to sell some people on that one. But okay, I'm gonna put you on the spot, man. Put your GM hat on. Okay, we're here. We got both the Michigan guys on the board. All right, we got Will Johnson, we got Mason Graham, and we sitting there at 6. What would you do? Where are you going?
See, I have to admit, I got to admit my bias here. I'm a former defensive lineman. I love the trenches, so I got to go with Mason Graham. I mean, he's a guy to me that when I watch this class, like he's the best defensive tackle prospect I've seen in the last few years, up there with Jalen Carter. And I think the only reason why I'd give Jalen Carter the nod over him is just because of the length that Carter kind of had and whatnot. But as far as being disruptive in both phases of the game, I mean, that's Mason Graham. I liken taking Mason Graham a lot to taking Brock Bowers last year, where tight end wasn't a need and whatnot, but you just get the guy that's an absolute baller and that you feel confident in, and then just kind of figure it out later. I think one of the things that gives me a little bit more encouragement is last year, what Patrick Graham was doing a lot of was running a ton of odd fronts where they'd have Adam Butler at one defensive end / defensive tackle spot, that 4-eye technique, and then Wilkins at the other one until Wilkins ended up getting hurt, and then it became Tyree Wilson and all those other dudes. So I think if you take that philosophy over, you can have Christian Wilkins and you can have Mason Graham on the field at the same time. And then on third downs, I mean, you got two really good interior pass rushers with 2 guys on the outside. I mean, that's how you help your secondary right there. You just have
and that's what I've preached that multiple times. Like at that point, bro, you could put my dad, you could put me out there. We could be out there at corner. At that point, you got that type of D line, and that's been my guy. If we're gonna go defense for real, I'm like, bro, you just take the best D lineman that's there. If it's me, I mean, I know people say we just paid Adam Butler, but it's like that's something you figure out as a defensive line. You can figure out how to get all them guys on the field at one point. And the fact that he wouldn't even be getting double teamed like that, as we know, like there's no way you will be able to just say, yeah, we're going to double team Mason Graham and be confident that everybody else is one-on-one with all the other guys. Like you can't do that
for sure.
So I would definitely love to select that guy. But okay, so if we're going, now just taking those 2 out of the equation, now I just want the generalized picture. All right. What's your bias? All right, where would you like us to go? If they're asking you, they're like, all right, Matt, where should we go? All right, if we're looking at all these guys on the board, who are you hoping falls to us? What is your guilty pleasure, so to speak? Where would you want to go at 6 and get some of these guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think the 2 guys we were just talking about, I think the 2 Michigan guys would be the ones that I'd hope that end up falling at 6, especially on the defensive side of the ball that I really have my eye on as the top candidates. The other one that I would throw out there that'd be more wild card would be a Will Campbell from LSU, maybe an Armand Membu from Missouri. I like Colton Miller. I think Colton Miller has been a damn good Raider and obviously exceeded expectations from when he was drafted. Right. But he is about to turn 30. And he's entering contract year, been beaten up over the last few years. So I think left tackle and finding a future left tackle is a sneaky need that maybe some people aren't kind of paying attention to. So if none of those mission guys are available, or you want to address the left tackle of the future and solve that problem long term. I think Will Campbell and Membu are definitely on the table at 6. And then, you can figure it out with what you want to do on the offensive line. Do you want to try and trade a Colton Miller to a team like the Patriots that could use a left tackle, or the Bears or something like that, and pick up an extra pick in the draft? Right. Or do you want to put one of those rookies at guard for a year and then kind of figure it out? And then once Miller leaves in free agency, then he steps in and takes over at that left tackle spot. So yeah, those are the 3 guys that I kind of have my eye on for the Raiders at 6: Will Johnson and Mason Graham from Michigan, and then Will Campbell. I guess 4 guys now. Armand Membu kind of entered that conversation with his performances recently from Missouri.
Yeah, no, and total agreement, man. That'd be the thing. Like, a lot of people don't look at offensive linemen because it's not sexy, of course, especially with all the other people on the board. But I mean, with the amount of running backs that are on the board for me, and I get into this conversation all the time, but I would love to, if you could take a top tier lineman and then select one of these other guys. Like, I feel like that's how you do it, right? Like, and then it's like the plan is clear from that point, what we're trying to do, and really trying to accomplish. But man, I really appreciate you, man, for showing up, man. I know we had a limited time, man. I tried to keep it on schedule, but definitely appreciate you for tapping in with us, man. Just spreading some knowledge, man. Anything you want to say to the people? Any shows you and Marcus got coming up that you want to go ahead and let the people know that's about to drop for you guys? Any episodes?
Yeah, we got just recorded one with Danny Stutzman and Travion Henderson. So got that coming out. Should be coming out on either Sunday or Monday. And then got a bunch of draft stuff going up on the channel. We've done a lot of the top prospects, a lot of guys we talked about here. If you guys want to go check that out, and of course did some our typical film breakdowns on the Raiders, broke down Chip Kelly's offense and the running and the passing game. If anyone's interested, but yeah, just go check us out at Tape Don't Lie. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, of course, man. Of course, always, man. We love your content, man. Anybody that just want to get informed, just want to know more ball, man. Make sure you guys tap in with them, man. Always a great watch. So again, appreciate you for pulling up, man. Hopefully we can do something after the draft, man. Maybe go over the picks, man, and see what we got. See what we got in them. But until then, man, make sure you guys keep hitting the like button, hitting the subscribe button, not only on my channel, but Matt and Tape Don't Lie channel as well. And until then, man, y'all already know what time it is, man. We keep it authentic from the clouds to the ground on the Raider Rundown. We'll see y'all next time, man. Peace.